Hello, and welcome to another episode of Toothless MMA Radio Series Quick Hitters. I'm your host, John Galloway, and today, as we look at the world of combat sports, I'll be joined by my guest, Bristol Marunde. Bristol, John Galloway, Toothless MMA, how's it going?
Very good, sir. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on today. So, Bristol, you got a fight coming up in about a month. Titan FC 29 taking place August 22nd. You're going to be facing Micah Miller. What do you know about the guy?
Well, Mike Miller is, I sure appreciate him taking the fight. I've had a few opponents drop out, and it's always nice when a guy does what he says and signs a contract. So, starting off, I'm happy that he's going to fight me, and that being said, I know he's going to come out and try to bring him, because when a guy accepts a fight, he thinks he can beat you.
So you've had a couple of people that have dropped out going into this fight?
Yeah, that's true, and for other promotions as well. I've had a couple fights lined up, and opponents get injured, and that's just the fight world. It happens. We train hard, and injuries happen. So, I'm real excited to get a fight, and for a great company like Titan. So, whether it's Micah or someone else, it doesn't really matter to me at this point. I'm just excited to fight. And, I know Micah comes from a good team, American top team. So he's going to have a full arsenal of weapons. He's got good submission, and I think that's where he probably is looking to finish the fight. He fights us in the past at a smaller weight, so he's probably not going to, he can't match me for strength. But he can, throw up slick submissions, and that's what I'll be looking for.
Yeah, there's not too many people in your weight class that can match his strength, Bristol. Now, looking at your two careers as you've both been coming up, he's a little bit younger than you, but he's got a little bit more experience in terms of the number of fights. Now, you have fights in Strikeforce. You were obviously a member of the Ultimate Fighter. You fought in the UFC. He hasn't had that level of competition yet. Do you think that's going to give you a leg up?
Yeah, what gives me a leg up at this point is that, big fight experience, yeah, it's helpful, but it's the person that's showing up to fight is more important. How have I prepared mentally, physically? That's more important than having big fights. Yeah, it helps with experience, but the motivation factor is more important than anything. And for me right now, I'm in a good spot with my team at Extreme Couture and my trainer, Robert Follis. I've kind of regenerated my reasons to fight. I no longer really care about what people think. I used to bring too much anxiety into the cage. I used to be a little stiff and, so concerned with winning fights. I kind of put that aside now, and now I fight because I want to have fun. This is what I enjoy doing. I love training. I love being a martial artist and testing myself in the cage. And I was able. My last fight, I was able to put that aside and go out and compete, and just let the real me come out and fight. And it turned out great. I finished my opponent in a minute and a half. And that's the fighter that's coming into this fight, enjoying what I do. So all that experience of ups and downs in the sport is only made me stronger and more motivated to fight.
Well, speaking of that last fight that you had, it was a minute 29 into the fight. You won by Kimura submission. It also propelled you into the welterweight championship for ROTR. Now, how does that play into your current fight schedule with Titan? Can you go back and forth and defend that?
Yeah. I talked to the promoter, and they're fine with that. I can go back and forth as of now. We'll see what happens. In my spot, I don't rely on fighting for money. This is something I enjoy to do. I work 50 to 60 hours a week at building my company here in Vegas with my fiance Aubrey, we flip houses together, and so I'm working construction all the time. And fighting is something I enjoy to do, and I don't really care where I do it at, whether it's UFC or Titan. The money at a lower level is not great, anyways. So that's really not my motivation. My motivation for fighting right now is just to be myself and fight to my best ability. And in doing that, I think is fun, and I'll produce a lot of wins.
Well, going back into how you started, you've been wrestling from a very young age. How exactly did you get involved in the MMA aspect of it?
I was in college, and I just loved to train, and it was whether it be lifting weights or wrestling or football. And collegiate sports were done for me. And my older brother suggested that I do it, and that I get into MMA. And that was in like 2004. So it was still pretty underground at the time. UFC was not mainstream. And it just sounded like a right fit for me. And I just enrolled in a fight in Seattle, and I started training for it, just finding whoever I could, karate instructors. And luckily there's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt in the area, and he just showed me a little bit about submissions, and it was just a natural fit. I enjoyed the competition of it, because MMA is one of the most difficult things I've ever done. And as far as mastering it, it's not really a sport you can master. There's always going to be somebody bigger and stronger and more technical than you. So I always just wanted to be on the top of the heap. And that's what always drew me back, was that it was such a difficult sport. And I knocked out my first opponent, and I was hooked. And I just wanted to continue to get better. And just winning fights is such a big reward.
Now, hearing that your motivation has changed, that's got to be something that comes from well within, in order to change that aspect of your personality. Was there a driving force that you said, I can't go on using this as my motivation, I have to change it?
Yeah, I kind of came to a spot where I was either going to retire from fighting or find a different path and a different avenue of how to train, because when you really believe that you can win them, but it just didn't happen. And so at that point, it's about skill. It's about other things, forces that are unseen, your motivation and your mental stability going into fight. Motivation for fighting. And, a big factor that kind of helped me come to these conclusions was Rob Follis. And he has a ton of experience with big fights and fighters. He was a starting partner in Team Quest back in the early 2000s, and now he's the head trainer at Extreme Couture. And he took me out to lunch and kind of set me straight and kind of talked some truth into my situation. And we've been training for 8-9 months, and we won our first fight together, which was my last fight, and I want to continue to do that. And so he can help me find my identity as a fighter. And, he told me, he's like, look, I'm a super athlete. You're a grinder. You're a blue-collar fighter. Just be that person. Be the best at what you are. Quit trying to be something else. And that made a lot of sense to me. And yeah, that's what we did in my last fight, and it worked great. We won in a minute and a half.
Now, this has become like I don't want to say a theme throughout the upper echelon of MMA, but you have yourself, who kind of lost the drive for it. Most notably right now, GSP is on a hiatus while he figures out whether or not he wants to continue. Is this something that fans can expect to see from top flight competitors like yourself? going more into the future because of the strenuous training regimens you put yourself through?
Yeah, I think it's important for everybody to find their way, and each person is going to be different, obviously, but you're going to see that reoccurring because it's a very difficult sport to master, like I said, and there's the research on the training is still fairly new. Because if you go into other sports like boxing or football or baseball, there's a huge framework of training that's been proven over 100 years. That's just not the case for MMA. We're still building what works and what doesn't work for each individual. So, and you can't lay down a generic training method and expect it to work for everybody. What works for me is not going to work for somebody else. And so, you kind of run through a scenario where if you go to a gym, you start training, and then you show up to fights, and you're not winning fights, you have to look at a lot of factors. Why aren't you winning? Everybody's good, and that's the whole point, is everybody's really good, but
Right.
only a few people are going to win in the big shows.
And from what I understand, that's one of the things that really appeals to you about the fight game, is putting two people at a high level that have comparable skills, and to see whose drive pushes that a little more. Is that a safe assessment?
Yeah, that's a good. This is such a competitive sport, and if you want to test yourself, try MMA and go into a cage and fight another grown man that's just as athletic and probably just as skilled as you are. Who's going to win? Every man wants to believe that he's the best and is capable of winning. And so when you do win, it's such a huge payoff. You put the time and the work in, and you won, and your formula worked. When you lose, it's the flip side, is that you want to know what went wrong, and you want to fix it, and you want to come back and win the next one. So that drive, I think, for each fighter is the same. We all want to win just as much. And only a few figure out the right formula for themselves of training and the mental aspects of the sport. And someone like GSP wins on the big stage, and he really performed incredibly under the lights. And that's what I want to do for myself. And the riches and the fame, that's not something that has ever come from me from fighting. And that's not something I really actually want at this point. I make a good living from flipping houses and doing blue collar work, and I'm happy doing that. But I want to fight for me and prove to myself that I can overcome any kind of weakness and that I can go out and win on a big stage. And that for me is worth the reward.
Absolutely, it's respectable too. Now, without looking past Micah, what do you see down the line in your future here with Titan? How do you see this playing out?
I believe that I'm going to go out and smash Micah, and I think after that they're going to give me someone else to fight, and I'm going to do the same to them. I'm on such a good training path right now, and I'm in a good spot in my life that I'm more than confident that I can win big fights. And I'd like to stay with Titan for as long as I can. If I'm not on this quest to get back to the UFC like most fighters are. If it happens, cool. If it doesn't happen, really doesn't bother me. I'm not in this must fight in UFC type of mindset. I just want to go out and perform the best I can. And if it's for Titan, then so be it. Then I appreciate them putting me on their fight cards, and I'll fight whoever. And one thing about me is I've never said no to a fight, even on short notice. I fought some of the best fighters in the world off a week's notice, and that's just kind of my blue collar mentality, is that I just go to work and I'll fight whoever.
That's it. Now, I gotta go back, because there's a lot of people look up to fighters as heroes, but for some people they actually see you and they believe you are a actual real world hero. going back several years ago now. There's a story about you and your father running down a wanted man in your neighborhood. You want to touch on that real quick?
Yeah, it was a pretty wild experience, man. It was late at night. It was about 11:30 in Bellevue, Washington, and in this condo complex, I heard my neighbors screaming for help, and it wasn't just a quiet scream. It was a loud cry for help, and it just hearing that scream, I thought somebody was getting murdered. So I opened the front door, not knowing what I was going to see, and suddenly this 6'5" tall guy ran right past me, and I looked in her apartment and saw her on the kitchen floor, laying on her back, and just the look on her face, I could see just the sheer terror. And I really don't know what possessed me to do it, but I just, without even thinking, I started chasing the guy down the street, and I wasn't planning on obviously going out, so I was just had a pair of shorts on. I was barefoot, had my shirt off, and it must have been a sight watching me.
I was going to say, that's got to be a pretty
busy street,
pretty crazy sight right there.
Yeah, exactly. And I chased him down for a quarter mile onto a busy intersection right on the corner. There was a gas station parking lot, and full of cars driving right by it. And I told him to stop, and he kind of put up his hand, and he said, I didn't do anything. He put up his hand, and he said, I'm not going anywhere with you. You know, kind of combative, and something just snapped, and I just launched a terrific head kick, caught him right on the side of the face, knocked him flat on his back, and he stood up. And at this point, I was kind of panicked. I didn't know if he had a knife or a gun, so I grabbed him around the collar, lifted him up, and foot swept him, and put him right on his back, and knocked the wind out of him. And then I held my fist over his face, and I told him, if you move, I'm going to kill you. And, you know, all this happened so fast, but he just went limp. He didn't move. He just stayed there, and I had my hand on his throat, and I meant it, too. If he started to get up, I was just going to start launching some ground attack there. But it just, you know, created quite a crowd. There was probably 15 or 20 people standing around me, like, all on their cell phones calling the police. And fortunately, the police got there very fast. It was only like 2 minutes, and there was 5 or 6 cop cars. And the best part about it was that they came screaming into the parking lot, but a couple of the cars actually did like a 4-wheel slide. Slammed on the brakes. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, I just looked up and saw these guys sliding into the parking lot, screeching their tires. I was like, wow.
It's like something out of a movie.
Exactly. This was like right out of a movie. And they get out of their cars, and I get up, and I stand back and kind of put my hands up because I didn't want to assume that they knew what was going on. I don't want to get shot. And they had their guns, and they had tasers out, and the guns pointed. I back up, and they just launched, started screaming at him on the ground, and he just arrested him and all that. And turns out, I didn't know at the time, but it turns out he had several felonies for burglary and one for rape. So this guy, he was a bad guy, and so they put him away for a long time. So he was inside that lady's house, my neighbor's house, when she got home, and he, I guess, grabbed her around the throat and threatened her, and so she screamed for help. But yeah, he's still in jail today.
I'm sure the streets are safer with you on them, I'll tell you that. So now, do you have any sponsors that you want to give a quick shout out to while we're here?
Man, you know what? I'm going into this fight, and I purposely didn't get any sponsors. I wanted to just fight for me. I don't want to worry about any business. This is about 100% about me fighting to win fights for me. I'm not doing it for anybody else, and I'm not attached to any outcomes. I just want to go on and perform to the best of my ability, and I'm excited to do that and to get a win. I want to finish Micah, and it doesn't matter when I do it, but I'm going to finish him. Probably something ugly, ground and pound, in your face type of fighting. So, you know what? Who I want to thank is Extreme Couture and Robert Follis. It's my team. We're all up and up together, so that's it, man.
Nice. Now, if people want to keep track of how your career is going, where they can watch you fight, how can they do that? Social media, Facebook, Twitter, where you at?
Yeah, I'm easy to find. Bristol Marunde is my tag for all my social media. You can always Google it, and my stuff comes up right there. I'm probably the only Bristol Marunde that actually does MMA in the world, so I have that title.
There you go. So, well, I really want to say thank you. That's going to wrap up another episode of Toothless MMA Radio Series Quick Hitters. I'd like to send a big thank you to today's guest for joining me. For Bristol Marunde, this is John Galloway, and we are tapping out.